So as I was mentioned earlier, you're an OG. You're not new to this game, and I think for those of us that miss maybe only our second time going through an experience like we're going on right now, or for listeners that this is their first real test of their investment fortitude, kind of give us some perspective from your landscape of being a long-term investor, investing in small companies, and going through these types of cycles before. Give us a little bit of reassurance that we're going to make it through this all right.
We are going to make it through this all right. And that is a great concern. And it never fully goes away. The wisest people build on their own experiences. And I've been through 2000 and the internet bubble. I've been through the global financial crisis, 2008. Certainly, December 18. I don't even think that's the same category. But the thing is that everything does pass. And it's really what you do during that moment in time that, makes a huge difference in where you end up afterwards. And so right now, we have these extended periods of time of relative stability, not complete stability. I mean, Billy Joel wrote that song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," well before the global financial crisis, well before, I think it was even probably before the NASDAQ bubble. And forever, there's been lunacy in the world. So at least in our world, in the last 50 years since World War II, we've had these periods of relative calm, and then we have these spikes of instability for shorter periods of time, chaos, when the world's on tilt. And so those happen periodically. As long as humans are on this earth, it will continue to happen because we're not wholly rational creatures. And we have greed, and we have economic disturbances and conflict and all of those types of things. And that will go on forever, and it will bubble up, and we will have these periods of chaos. They pass. The way that we behave during those periods becomes incredibly important in terms of our life's path. The way that one small decision may wind up having huge repercussions down the line.
So one of the things you said earlier that I liked is that wise people learn from their experiences. I think those individuals building their wisdom learn from the experiences of others. So which is why I love this conversation, because I was in 2008, 2009. I experienced that. I didn't have my own business at the time, but I had clients that I was their financial advisor, and they ultimately became the founding clients of my firm. So this is not my first time helping people through chaos. From your experience, what are the things that you've done that you think have allowed you to successfully navigate these times and not throw your hands up and just quit and walk away? Because you've done it multiple times. So it is doable. It does end, like you said. But what did you do that allowed you to make it through each of those other events that you've been through?
That's a great question. And I love the way you just put it to me. There has to be that fire burning inside of you to take on life every day. And when we lose that, that is a major, major loss. And there are people who lose that as they age. There are people who lose it early. And I'm not here to judge anybody's early experiences, because there are people out there who have had incredible difficulties early in their lives. And there have been people who have persevered and become greater because of it. And there have been people who have folded. And so really, there has to be that fire. That has to be that not giving up. Seligman back in the day called it hopelessness, right? So Marty Seligman, now he studies happiness, but way back in the day, he developed a model of depression. And he did this study. They would never allow you to do it today, but because of ethics. But back in the day, he could do it, right? And so what he did was he took these dogs and he put them on a conveyor belt, and they're walking, and then he shocked them. And so what did the dog do? The dog would jump out of the situation. They would get out of the conveyor belt and then what he did was he took those, he took some dogs and he sort of trapped them in there so that they couldn't get out. And so they would try to get out. They would get shocked and try to get out. And then after a while, they would give up. Mm-hmm. They would stop trying to get out. They would just take the shock, and he called that helplessness. And he formulated a model of depression around it. And it is a depressogenic model if you give up. And so I would say the number one thing, there's a lot of other things too, right? There's not making the same mistakes over and over again. The quote that we were both alluding to early in this conversation was, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. The average person learns from his own mistakes and the idiot never learns. I would say that even if you're just at that level, by that standard, even if you're just average person, you're pretty darn wise because there's a lot of people who never learn. But the first thing that you really need is that fire. Getting up every day, taking care of your stuff, going out and exercising, getting outside, having that fire in you to say, hey, I'm going to take it on. That's number one. That's probably the most important thing. And then to learn from your environment and to really take in what's going on. Humility is gargantuan. A lot of these things are not so easily teachable in a 30-minute podcast or video. Got to get that off my chest. I say it almost all the time. We could talk wisdom all day long. There's going to be people who are going to kind of half watch it and not listen, watch it and make excuses. So it's the fire, and then it's that humility to say, okay, if I'm not getting it right here, if I'm struggling here, then maybe listening to some other people who have that experience, who have the wisdom, might be helpful to me.
Well, I think the beauty of what you're talking about is, I think maybe it's because of the world that I live in right now. A lot of focus is on the markets. A lot of focus is on investments. We're down, 35% or whatever it might be. When from the highs, when's the market going to recover? And you are an investor, but not one thing you just talked about from your experience, not one thing that is the most important thing that you would try to convey to listeners had anything to do with that. It was bigger picture. It was life. It's having a purpose. And I think that's very important because when you look at the headlines and all the doom and gloom and the projections and this could happen, that could happen, the market's down, like those are distractions and those are things that can kind of, I think, box us in. But there are bigger things that will override those things. An interesting thing I've noticed is I haven't had a lot of clients reaching out, but it's the younger clients who have been the ones that have reached out. And I think that's because they haven't learned from their own experience yet. They haven't really been through these times. My older clients, I think that's a combination of being through this before. They know that these things happen, markets recover. It's not fun, but they know how to navigate it. But I also think they have a different perspective on life, that they are getting closer to the end of their lives and they're focusing on the more important things and realize that that's what they need to focus on, not all this other noise. So I really like the fact that you haven't mentioned anything about investing, about taking advantage of the dips or anything like that. It's more about finding purpose, finding something to get you going every day. And we're going to dive further into that because our conversation last week, just catching up, there was something that you wrote down on a Post-it note back in the day that I think speaks to this. But I just really wanted to point that out, that to get through these types of times, to get through chaos, it's not going to be the distractions. It's going to be the things that you find most purposeful in your life. For some, it's family. For some, it's other things, but it's knowing what that is. And I don't think a lot of people know that.
This is a moment when we have an opportunity to better understand what is most important in our lives. And it ain't the market. It is our health. It is the people that we care about around us. It is our growing. And that may be in business. That may be in the markets. That may be, studying something that you've always wanted to study. That may be becoming a better painter. A faster runner, that is growth. Those are the things that matter. As a matter of fact, the markets and money are not unimportant, but I'm not, I wouldn't put them in the top 5, 6, 7 things at least for me,
Mm-hmm.
at where I am in my life. I can understand if they're 4. People make jokes about it being more important than their health. That, I think, from an objective point of view, is not prioritizing correctly. But there are more important things. And it's funny that you asked me that question, or you put it out there, because more and more I've been talking to people over the course of the weekend. I talked to 5 or 6 people that I know very well, that are were all under a high level of stress. And I find the people who are having a more difficult time, when we get into the conversation and they keep coming back to the market, they keep bringing that back up, even if I ask them about something completely different, those are the people who are struggling more. And that is that is an obsession. That is more of sort of an obsessive mind, reflexive or obsessive mind function. Don't know how to, if you're caught in that, where, oh my God, everything's the market, oh my God, and you're letting other parts of your life lag or fall by the wayside, I don't have anything that I can say to you that's going to help you snap out of it. It's not that easy.
That's going to be my question. My question was going to be, what would be your advice to somebody who is trying to figure out how to break that cycle of the things boxing them in so they can find? And I would just say, like, for me personally, I've always known what is most important to me. It's always been centered around family and then kind of builds from there. But I have, over the last couple of years, realized I've been able to identify what makes me the happiest, and then try to build my life around being able to do as many of those things as possible. And just really knowing that I can't do everything, even though I try to do way more than I should, but really zoning in on what are the things that make me most happy, and let me eliminate the things that I don't care about as much, and then go all in on those things. And if that means I miss opportunities or I don't go down a path I thought I was going to go down, that's fine, because I really want to try to build this life that I really, really enjoy and have as minimal, unenjoyable moments as possible. And I think that, like, the way you figure this out is just to, if you can, and whenever you find that moment of calm, just step back and evaluate what is it that makes you the most happiest. Is you just think, when do you find yourself smiling? When do you find yourself most happy? And then write those things down, and then build around, okay, how do I do more about this? So one of the things I'm real excited about going forward from a financial advisor standpoint is the whole life planning process. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but George Kinder came up with life planning, and it's basically aligning your values with your dollars, or aligning your dollars with your values, and making sure you're building this life of everything that you want to accomplish. And to me, that just seems so obvious. And I really am excited about helping people do that. Back to the original point of the conversation, or the last little part of it, was I don't think a lot of people know that, because they are set up with those distractions. And I think that giving people a space to talk about what is most important to them, and just listening, that can kind of help those people figure those things out. But I was hoping you had the magic answer of, here's what you need to do to be able to find out what those things are that will ground you and to focus on.
Well, I will tell you this, and this comes from a lot of experience. This comes from, in a past life. I've had many vocations. And in a past life, I was actually a psychologist. Earned a doctorate in it, practiced work with children and families. And I will tell you this, that there are some people out there who are born understanding why they're here and what they were meant to do in the world. And then there are some people who live to be 90 and who never have figured it out. And then the rest of us, and most of us, are somewhere in between. And there may be, the majority of people watching this today, this one data point, there may be nothing we can do for most of them. It becomes a culmination. And everybody has, or at least people that do continue to grow and transform and find that thing that you were talking about, they have either one moment or a series of moments of enlightenment or epiphany, that aha moments that change them, either all at once or in small ways. It can happen gradually, or it can happen massively at once. Whether this is that moment for anybody or not, I have zero idea. From my point of view, it's absolutely worth doing this, just in case 0.01% of the people watching, if we hit somebody, even if it's just a gradual, even if it's not the massive hit, totally worth it. Dude, we hit one person. 2,000 people watch this video. We hit one person, change their life. If we spent 10 hours of our time, it would have been worth it. I'm sure, I know you already, so I'm sure you would agree with that. So it's not an all or nothing thing. It's not, it's the rare person who's born with it. Sadly, there are many, many people who live their full lives. They call it living a life of quiet desperation. If you have that spark, you have that potential. I didn't come to it at a very young age. For me, it was a battle, and I was angry, and I never really gave in, which actually that energy was actually a positive thing, because it meant I was still struggling with, I wasn't that dog I wasn't one of Seligman's dogs who had given up. And so there probably are people watching right now who still have that attitude, but they haven't found it yet. Maybe this is that thing that clicks it in. Maybe it is the market. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe that is your thing. Mm-hmm. Whatever your thing is. Maybe you're never going to be a family guy. Who am I to judge? Maybe it is the market. So, but it is out there, and everybody has a calling, and it's up to ourselves. It's not up to me and you to convince anybody. It's up to everybody on their own to find it and grab it, and then make it happen, impel it to happen.
I think there's no better time for someone who really wants to figure this out to do it. We're recording on March 24th, 2020. So we're in the middle of social distancing, coronavirus taking over the world. We're confined to our houses. And there's a number of reasons I think it's good. One, we find ourselves having more time. Now, I thought I'd have a lot more time, but realizing that, like, helping the boys and everything, but I'm not going to practice. We're not taking the boys to practice. We're not driving around town. So there is more time for reflection. But more importantly, I think we're having a lot of the things that we think we need, that we think are important for us, taken away right now. I think we're going to find out that we can live very happily confined to what we have in our house without a lot of the other stuff that we once thought we needed, whether that be from a professional standpoint. Maybe you don't need that office that you go to all the time. You can work from home and work virtually, and you can change your life to be more around your family or whatever it might be. Or you thought that you needed to go to the gym every day, but come to find out you can do a lot of real good body weight exercises and do it at home. I think that we're going to learn there's a lot of things that we feel like we need that we don't really need in this time, and we can reevaluate our priorities and what's most important, and then come up with that list and then redo the plan to be able to come out of this with a new outlook on life and a new approach to the way that we're doing things to be focused on the things that are most important to us. So I think it's the perfect time for somebody to think through this.
This is an amazing time for those who are able to grab the opportunity that exists within the chaos. There are very savvy people out there right now who are healthy and able to function in chaotic environments, who are grasping those opportunities. And you're really speaking of that. Some will learn, many will not. And I will, you were asking me at the beginning of this conversation about my experiences. Let's go back to the global financial crisis. I remember coming out of that, I was super optimistic. And my thought was that this would usher in a rebirth culturally in our nation that was less materialistic and more humanistic. It was more focused on relationships and was less focused on the things that we have. And I think that lasted for, culturally, that lasted for a short period of time. And then it dissipated, and a lot of the old patterns started coming up. And I'm not a religious person at all, but I think these are similar lessons of, this is a archetypal story that is forever human nature. It's mythical, and it goes back to the golden calf at the foot of the Sinai, right? Where they build the false god. It will happen. It's human nature. It will happen over and over and over again. That's culturally. Individually, it's very different. And so our ability to experience enlightenment out of a crisis is potentially very high if we're willing to go down that road. And so while I was wrong about coming out of that crisis and thinking, well, maybe this will usher in an age of more humanism, less materialism, I think that if you were to look at individuals, if you were to do a case study model where n equals 1 and look at one person, look at one person, look at one person, there were individuals out there who were affected in a very positive way. And I think what you're talking about right now, there's an old cliche that the Chinese word for crisis also means opportunity, right? If you've ever been to any type of corporate conference before, you've heard somebody spouting that. And that is it's a falsehood, right? The word in Chinese for crisis does not also mean opportunity. I actually looked it up the other day because I was like, I don't know about that. But it doesn't mean that there's not some truth to that a crisis really is an opportunity. And then we have that opportunity on a personal level to soul search, like you were saying, to really experience what's important, not just have those priorities. You were very blessed to already have that priority set. Guessing you had really good parents because you seem like you were grounded in that way pretty early on. We have that opportunity right now, all of us. It has to do a lot with what's going on here. It has to do a lot with what's going on in our inner circle, in our dwelling, where we're living right now, family, the immediate surroundings, not that crazy on-tilt world out there.
You pointed to your head. I'm hoping this video comes across. I know we're going to have the podcast version. I'm hoping the video comes across the way I hope it does. But as you pointed to your head, I've been sitting here making sure I don't forget, like, mindset. So you mentioned earlier there's certain things that we can't control. It's just kind of the way we are. I think mindset is another big piece of thing, going back to having the ability to see what's going on now as an opportunity or find opportunities within it rather than seeing all of the negativity around it. And unfortunately, mindset is something that I don't think can be taught either. And I don't even know if it can be changed. For whatever reason, I have been fortunate to be blessed with a optimistic, positive mindset. Like I had a momentary time of weakness Sunday night where I just kind of was like, man, when is this going to end? I know it's going to. And I remember feeling this way back in 2008, but like, is this time not going to be different? Are we not going to bounce back? And just like some momentary moment of weakness. And I texted a friend and kind of snapped out of it real quick. And I'm just so thankful that I don't get bogged down with that I do see the silver lining and I do see opportunities. Do you, and maybe there's not an answer, but going back to your background with your doctorate, which I did not know, is there a way that people can work on retraining their mindset to try to find the optimism? And I don't think you have to be foolish and realize that there aren't bad things that happen in life and that things don't always work out the way you want to, but just that trying to find the positive is going to lead to a happier, more successful life, I believe, than always dwelling on the negative. I just think that negative mindset just continues to compound on top of you and it's harder to get out of it. So, from experience or from your training and education, is there a way that people can kind of retrain that mindset?
Before I answer that question, I want to go back to what you said about what happened to you over the weekend where you had a moment of difficulty. Because that, over the weekend, a buddy of mine texted me. This is a guy I've been sort of old friend, really close friend. I've been coaching him on nutrition and health recently, right? Mm-hmm. And he sent me a DM. I talked to him recently. He was telling me how good he was doing. And then he sent me a DM and he was like, I got to tell you, over the weekend, I really slipped up. And he was being really hard on himself. And it made me think about my own path and how many times I slipped up, how many times I totally messed up, how many times I screwed the pooch, how many times I fumbled the ball to get where I've gotten. And all I did was pick that ball up. And all I said to him was, listen, this is progressive. The path to nutrition and health is progressive, but we're also humans going through this incredibly stressful event. And I'm not any better at it than you. I've just been practicing it longer than you. And I've done 2 steps forward, 1 step back so many freaking times, I can't even tell you. And he was like, oh man, that's great to hear it. Thank you for telling me that, because I really didn't think about, how many times you fucked up, you know what I mean? And so it is just, we have to, if you're out there listening to this and you're pulled in here, you are going to give yourself a break. You're going to screw up. You're going to fall off the horse. You're going to have a moment like Justin had over the weekend. You're going to have a moment like I've had 100 times of freaking going out and, eating too much and freaking getting dessert after, and then, not working out the next day and gaining like 4 pounds in one day. That shit really happens, by the way. I'm not even,
I've had it happen.
You know what I'm talking about? The older you get, the more you can just look at a pie and you gain a pound. So you are going to screw up. In that moment, if you beat yourself up, that's going to be very difficult. If you just give yourself a break and get back on the bike, get back on the horse and say, okay, screwed up. That was my 1 step back. Now let's go forward again. That is huge. The other thing, what was your original question? I forgot now.
Just is there a way to change the mindset? It's part of
the mindset.
Yeah.
The mindset. Great question. So there's no easy way. Okay. For some people, like I said, it happens at birth. They're born with the mindset. For some people, they die at 90 and never got the mindset. For some people, it's a gradual, minor epiphanies. For some people, it hits them all at one moment of their life, the crossroads. There's no one path for it. There are ways to spur it along. There are ways to sort of, there are catalysts. What I would recommend in that case is processing, cognitive processing. And what I mean by that is writing it down in a journal. Something happens to you today, you're going through an experience, write it out in detail. You can make video journals. I've started doing that, right? I have a day, I go into photo booth. Nobody else in the world's ever going to see it. I make a 3-minute video on what happened. I put it in my Google Photos. I have it forever by date, so I can kind of remember, oh yeah, I remember I was going through something. It was during that crisis. Let me go find that video. Process, that is a similar treatment for PTSD, right? So there's a therapy that is evidence-based, that has been proven through research, years of research, called cognitive processing therapy. And patients who come in who are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, they've been through something very difficult, right? And so what are some of the symptoms of that besides the anxiety? Well, it's having nightmares, right? You're playing out that thing over and over again. It's having intrusive thoughts where that thing, the accident is coming into your mind over and over again. It's if, let's say you were in an accident and you hear something, you hear a loud bang, somebody drops something and you jump like that. Your mind has not fully processed. So processing is so critical. It's not going to get you there. It's not going to get you to a place where you're enlightened and you're following your path and your bliss. But it is going to be a catalyst. So that's really the only recommendation I can give, is that actively process, whether it's talking it out to yourself, whether it's writing it down, whether it's talking about it with somebody close to you who you trust.
One of the things that helps me and helped me on Sunday night was going back to, so part of what was getting me down was just all of the news about government not coming to an agreement on the stimulus package, and then letting all of the noise on Twitter and other places just kind of, I don't know, compound on top of me. But after texting my friend, I got back and just kind of thinking about the things that I can control. And I know you have some opinions on this as well, but I really try to focus on what I can control. I tell my clients that, I write about that, but there's certain things we can't control: the market, the government, all those things we can't control, but we can control our behaviors, how we interpret things. So going back to, okay, going through this and navigating the waters for my clients and helping them, what are the things I can control on? And let me go back to that. And those things that I can control, I feel pretty confident about. And as I focus on the things that bring me confidence, then that gets my mind back right and I'm feeling good about myself. So we kind of touched on a little bit before we started recording, but how does focusing on the things that we can control help in this, and how's it helped in your life and experience?
Monster question. I'm going to just take a moment to try to set it up simply. It's a fairly complicated concept that I'm going to try to really simplify. In the world, there are people who are deterministic. They believe everything is laid out in front of them, and they are merely playing a role. That is determinism, right? Everything is predetermined. Then there are people who, at the opposite end of this seeming antithesis, are constructivists who believe that they create their own reality. My view is that these are not opposites, that these are dialectics that exist at the opposite ends of the same spectrum, and that the truth is a synthesis somewhere in between. There are certain things that we cannot control that are deterministic. We can't control who our parents were. We can't control the period in which we were born or the socioeconomic status within which we were born. There are other things that we can control. When we wake up, what do we do that day? To some degree, what our thoughts are, what behaviors, as you pointed out, what behaviors. So in reality, they're not opposites. They are dialectics at the opposite ends of the same spectrum. Somewhere in here is an area where we can be mindful of what our situation is, what is determined, what is the reality, and what we can do at the same time. And so for me, what that meant was zooming in, saying to myself, okay, life is very complicated. There are a million things that I could focus on. I'm going to choose to focus on only 3 of them. Those 3 things that I'm going to focus on may not be the same 3 things that you focus on, Justin, or they may not be the same things that somebody watching this is going to focus on. For me, they are, number 1, my health, because without that, I can't really do anything else. So I have to put that first, even before my family, who are so important to me. Then number 2 is my family, and then number 3 is my vocation, is my work and my business. And a number of years ago, I wrote down on a file card HFW, health, family, work, and I taped it to my dresser. I look at it even to this day, almost every day, and I begin there. And those are really the only 3 things. Everything else is secondary. Some things are more secondary than others, right? My friends are also very important to me, but guess what? 4. They're not, they don't make the cut. Sorry JL, sorry JC, sorry to my homeboys, but they're 4th on that list. Now, I may get to a separate time in my life, like in retirement, where some of that stuff will shuffle. Work may go down to 4 and friends may go up to 3 or whatever. But at this point in my life, everything that I do, when I wake up in the morning and I look at that card, it's my health. What am I going to do today to take care of myself? It's my family. Hey, let me check in with my crew and make sure that they're okay. And then 3rd is, okay, let's go out and, build my business.
Do you remember what the epiphany was to write those letters down on the note card? Like, what made you do that?
Yeah, I was one of those gradual epiphany people. Even after I wrote that down, I had major setbacks, and I was never one of those people who knew what they were going to do. As a matter of fact, in my 20s, I remember going through a period of my life where I was spiteful to people that had chosen their chosen their path and vocation at such a young age. I was jealous, right? Oh man, I have no idea what I'm doing. And these guys are freaking 24 and they've already figured it out and they're already on that path. So for me, you know what it was? I remember what it was. I was circling this for a while. This was something I was working out in my head. And I had really, and I was zooming in and out, right? So I was focusing on my health for periods of time and then losing it and then coming back to it, getting better and better, but not 100% committed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it was approaching New Year's Eve. I don't even remember what the year was, but it was probably somewhere around 2011, 12, 13, somewhere in there. And I had been circling all of these things, getting a little bit better, but taking only baby steps and also lapsing. And it was New Year's Eve. So I was like, okay, what are the things that come this new year I'm going to really commit to? It's a new beginning. I'm really big on rebirth. I'm really big on new beginnings and new starts. You could fuck up 1,000,000 times, but if you catch it that 1,000,001st time, you could still win, right? Mm-hmm. And so I remember it being New Year's, like 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. I think it was after the crisis, because I got a lot of good energy coming out of the global financial crisis. And it was New Year's Eve. So I was like, okay, what are the things I'm going to commit to in this new year as I rebirth? And I just wrote them down. And that's when it really started to stick.
I would have the same letters. They'd be different orders. Mine would be family, health, work. And I think part of that is, you mentioned the letters may shift around time. Knock on wood. Right now, my health is pretty good. So I feel like I could let that slip a little bit and still be in good shape if my family needed me to. But I do get if you're not taking care of yourself and your health is not good, then what good are you going to be to your family and what good are you going to be to work? But those are the three things. And going back to structuring my life to do the things that I enjoy the most, it is those three things. It's my family, it's taking care of myself, and then it's my job and all the things that I do within it. And if I were to show you my calendar, if I were to write down everything that I did during the week, it's pretty much something related to those three things. It's working out, riding the Peloton, doing those types of things. It's playing with the boys. It's incorporating them in the work. And then it's being with my clients. It's recording podcasts like this. It's writing blog posts. Like, that is how I do the things I do, because for me, it's fun to sit down at 9:00 at night, instead of watching a show, do a video, edit a video, write up. Like, I enjoy that. So I'm the same letters as you right now. Today, my letters are a little bit different. And the type of person I am, that, like, you've got it on the note card you see every day, that would be the type of thing that I would go get, like, tattooed, like, right on my chest. And I would have it be reversed so that when I look in the mirror, it reads left to right to me. And that's my constant reminder. That's my note card, is every morning when I look in the mirror to brush my teeth, I see those letters as a reminder. I may just have to go do that. I've had an itch to get another tattoo, so that may be it.
I've never gotten a tattoo, but the tattoo but you're inspiring me now. But the tattoo I'd really love to get is that no regrets one. The guy where the guy spells regrets wrong. Yes. And it's just like, no regrets, But seriously, though, that's a great idea, man. I mean, maybe I just go get that tattoo. It has been profound in my life. What was it? H, F, W. Yep. In opposite order. So when I look at it, it's in the right order.
So here's what you do. I was supposed to be in New York recording this with you today, and then going to see our friend Josh Brown later on. I have a ticket to New York at some point when things pick back up. We'll go get those tattooed on our chest. There's a good tattoo shop in New York. We'll go get it, and then we'll have to, like, record it. That'll be an awesome follow-up.
My wife will never stop mocking me.
That's all right.
Like, look at that! You look ridiculous.
But she is a big part of that. She is in that. So,
you were asking me, by the way, about, like, she had a huge part. Mm-hmm. Huge. My wife is a huge inspiration to me. To keep that fire that I talked about at the beginning, to light that, to keep me motivated to push, to better ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So as we think about all of the stuff we've just kind of run through, and I think it's great because this is the way my mind operates. So, not that I want to have a lot of confirmation bias. It's a lot of fun to talk to somebody else that kind of sees things the way I do. I'm looking at opportunities coming out of this, and hopefully individuals that are listening or watching this, kind of our conversation sparked them to take a reevaluation of their life, what's important to them, write down their 3 letters, and then look at, okay, coming out of this chaos, what are the opportunities that are at hand for us individually, and maybe on a larger scale, if we want to think investments, what are opportunities out there? What are the opportunities that you see coming out of this that you're excited about, whether it's for yourself and some new things that you want to do, or just opportunities in general? But what's got you excited about this current situation that we're in?
So going back to an earlier part of our conversation and thriving during these periods of, global chaos, having a little more time and being able to focus on plotting, planning, coming up with brilliance, and being inspired. For me, I am a content creator, and I am a person who is able to inspire others, help others, be inspired by others, and learn from other people. And so for me, what I want to be doing is really taking my own content creation game to the next level. We are in a world right now where we all have the ability to create and distribute content to get it out there. And it's, content management systems are globally ubiquitous, right? I mean, you go on Twitter, it's a content management system. You can tweet. If you tweet something brilliant every single day, people are going to notice you. If you blog something brilliant every single day, people are going to read it. If you make a video every single day that's inspiring or brilliant in some way, people are going to watch it. And so there has to be there a willingness to totally suck, to not know what you're doing, to have poor audio, to not have the video set up the right way, to fumble your words, to get criticized. That willingness has to be there. But I really, for me right now, I'm in a period where I had sort of closed that part of me down for a long period of time, and I'm reopening that back up. And so that's my sort of a project and calling at this point. I think everybody, this is an individual question, so I can't answer anybody else's question out there. For me, it's community building, it's expressing myself, it's building a group of people around me who are supportive, it's inspiring other people, and it's getting better at making videos.
So I think this could be a whole additional episode, which we're not going to go into, but real quick, I mean, I'm a huge believer in content. Like my content is king shirt on right now.
This is where me and you have connected without even knowing.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a very strong belief in the way I think content should be done. But what's the core of your core belief to the way content should be done? So I'll share mine to give you a second to think. So I think the best way to create content, and those that do it best and have the most success, is it is purely about the consumer. It's the person consuming it, whether it's listeners, readers. You are creating content to educate, to better their life, to give them information that they don't have. It's not about creating content to make a sale, whether that is getting them to be clients or selling a product. I think the best content is really for the people who are consuming it. And to your point, if you do a good job, if you bring them a lot of value, educate them, entertain them, whatever it might be, if you do that consistently, you do that a lot, I think the end result is the growth that you're hoping to happen, whether that's subscribers or business will come. But I'm a big believer in doing things genuinely for the right reasons. Writing a blog post just because this is information people need to know and it needs to go out there with no other motive behind it other than that. And I think it needs to be authentic. I think it needs to be your voice, and you come through. And then my other core belief is you've got to be in it for the long game. So a lot of people, they want to go down this path. They see people with blogs and podcasts. It looks like fun. They do a couple times. They get criticized, and criticism's hard. Or they don't have a lot of listeners or readers and they give up real quick. And this type of approach to anything, whether it's trying to grow your business or just trying to put good content out there, it takes a while to work, but it does work. So as I got on go ahead.
You hit 3 big ones, right? You hit value, providing value.
Mhm.
You hit making the investment, giving of yourself everything you have. And you hit perseverance, um, keeping the course even when you're being criticized, even when you have zero audience, and just continuing to do it. I really don't have that. I have a couple other things to add. Only I would add emotional salience, having an emotional investment and connection. Whatever you're going into, there has to be you have to be connecting on an emotional level, because that's where people aren't going to tell you this, but where people reside is in their emotional worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions drive so much. E. Cumming once said, since feeling is first, who pays any attention to the syntax of things? He was incredibly insightful, right? Their feelings are first. So appealing to emotion. And then the other thing, and I think these two things go together, is having a story, having a narrative. Emotion and a narrative. There's only so many stories. It's really in the telling, right? So having being able to tell that story and appealing to emotions, adding to what you were saying about value and commitment and perseverance.
I like it. And I would agree with all those. Again, this is why you and we get along, even though we didn't even know it beforehand. So my final question, I'll do this before we get to my final question. Any closing thoughts that you have that you feel are important with the things that we've talked about today?
I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did.
I don't really have much more to add. The only thing that I would add is, if you are watching this right now and you have watched this whole thing, so you've made it through 50 minutes of Justin and Phil going deep, I would really encourage you to pull out a Google Doc or a Sharpie and a notebook and write down where you're at this moment. Because if you've watched this full thing, it may have affected you in some way. And so if you're able to write down something, even if it's just one sentence, that one sentence could be huge. For me, 3 words are huge. So even if it's just one sentence of you processing or of you summarizing where your head's at, hearing this stuff, that would be the only thing that I have to add here, is really sort of a prompt to the listener at this moment to extend this program through yourself and go and create something of your own, even if it's one sentence of the meaning of this for you.
I have nothing to add to that. So I'll get to my final question. So I ask everybody the same question. And part of it is I want listeners to kind of learn financial things from other people as well. So my question for 2020 is, what is the financial decision that you've made that's made you the happiest?
The financial decision that I've made that's made me the happiest has been to set it and forget it. And, there are 4 low-cost Vanguard broad market ETFs, VTI, VXUS, VOO, and I'm forgetting the last one, and VBR, drastically underperformed, small cap value,
yep, 0 for
VBR. 2. The greatest nudge of all time was the automatic deposit. Greatest nudge in history. This is going back 40 years, right? 50 years. Auto deposit was the greatest nudge of all time, because of the way it's, a nudge, if you'll recall, frames the environment for you, and you willingly join that frame, that configuration, that behavioral configuration. And so just saying, hey, every single month, automatically, I'm going to take a little bit and put it in to an account that's put away, that has some cash and then some combination of these 4 broad ETFs that are efficient cost-wise, relieved me That's a decision I made a while ago. It relieved me of so much worry about markets. And especially, you were saying something early on, if you're young, that the majority of people who've reached out and have been most worried have been the younger cohort of your customer base. And I will tell you this, if you're watching this and you're one of those people in that younger cohort, you are loving this app. It might feel terrible, but rationally, this is great. Because if you're putting a little bit away every month, even if it's $1, you're putting it away every single month, the market may not return to this value in the next year or 1 or 3 or 5 years, but 20 years from now. So if you're in your if you're in your early 30s, by the time you get to be your mid 50s, chances are the money you're putting away passively every month is at this moment when everything's on sale is going to have that much better a return way, way, way down the road.
And I think the power of mentioning those funds, which I'm going to go into compliance, those were not recommendations. Consult your financial advisor to see if those are good funds for you. But the power of you recommending those funds is you're a former hedge fund guy. You invest in private companies and startup companies, but yet the decision that made you the happiest was the most basic fundamental one that everybody could go do. So while you've done complicated things in the past, that isn't where you saw the greatest value or the biggest bang for your buck. And I just think that sometimes we want to overcomplicate things. Again, going back to controlling what we can control. We can control how much we save and what kind of, to an extent, we have our income, we can control what we can save. And then we can't really control the market. So just get it in there, let it do its thing and play the odds. That the longer the time you have, the better the odds are you're going to be ahead of the game down the road. And then as you get closer and closer, maybe you adjust your risk tolerance and those types of things. That's where financial planning comes into place. So I just wanted to let people know that if they didn't do their research on Phil, and I'll have some show notes and things, like your background would maybe suggest that you would want something more complicated, but you had something very basic that we could all do. So I just think that's very powerful. So Phil, I'm sure that you are going to be gaining some fans. I hope so from this. Where can they find you? So plug 8 Fat Swine, plug your Twitter, all that stuff. Where can they find you and follow you?
8fatswine.com, P Pearlman on Twitter. If you reach out to me, I will. If you reach out to me sincerely, I will happily reply.
All right. I'll have links to those in the show notes on the blog over on All About Your Benjamins. But Phil, I really appreciate that in this chaotic time, you took an hour of your day to chill with me and talk a little bit. I think the conversation was great, and I think it will definitely reach at least one person. I'm hopeful that whether it be DMs to you or to me or Twitter, that we get some people that send us their 3 letters and what they mean. So anybody out there, if you want, it would be the greatest compliment to get an email or a DM with, hey, here's my 3 letters from your podcast, and I'll share them with Phil, and likewise, just so we can see that we've maybe reached that one person out there. So, and then we'll video when I get Phil to get a tattoo.
I love it.
All right,
thank
Phil.
you so much for having me.
Thank
brother.
you. All right, everybody,
Appreciate it.
check the show notes, like, reviews, all those good things, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Adios.